Hey, Jeff. Good morning, buddy. How are you?
Good morning, Jake. I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing great, man. Doing great. It's been a while. I appreciate you taking some time to sit down. I know we all have a little Zoom fatigue happening at this point, but it's really great to see you. And it's been quite a while. I think last January in Vegas, probably at Affiliate Summit, was the last time we actually saw each other, huh?
Who would have thought that we'd all be itching to get back to the conference scene, right? Definitely ready to hop on an airplane and go someplace.
Are you going to go to Lead Gen World next week in Orlando?
No, I think that's probably a little too soon,
Yeah.
Right? For everybody here. Plus, we have a lot going on here in terms of hiring growth, and I got to be here to kind of hold down the fort in the near term. But definitely looking forward to traveling towards the end of this year, early next.
Great, man. That's great. We have a few team members going to Orlando. I'm sitting this one out, but yeah, I think the next thing I'll probably be at would be Affiliate Summit in New York. They're pegging it for late July right now, so hopefully that comes through. That'd be great.
It'd be great to get back to New York.
I know, right? Yeah, it's the longest I've gone without being in the city, and I think pretty much close to my whole life, at least from teenage years on, for the most part. So.
I know. Well, hopefully you still keep your status on your airline, Jake.
Yeah, that's long gone, man. So, man, what's been happening with you? I know you've got a lot going on with the company, with your personal lives and everything. What's how's 2020 been overall for you guys?
It's actually been considering everything, it's actually been a really good year for us. Business has been growing. Got a new kid on the way, baby number 2, next month. So we're really excited about that. And man, just really excited in terms of the direction where the company's going and the tailwinds behind us right now. So just kind of hoping to ride the wave into this year and into next year.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I know you guys just kind of recently rebranded. Now you're Atwave, formerly Bliss Media, of course, for those who might be listening who've been in the space a little bit. And you guys are still focused really entirely in the email world. What have you guys seen happen over the last year? Have you seen any things kind of deviate, change, new trends? What's your eye looking like on things in the space?
Yeah. So first, I'll kind of touch base on the rebrand a little bit, and
Sure.
kind of everyone's always asking the meaning. What's the meaning behind Atwave, right? And the reason is that every email address has an @ symbol, right? And so we want to kind of play off of that, right? And then also really emphasizing that email can be done at scale, a scalable channel. We're also here in Miami Beach, an emerging kind of tech hub, and wanted to kind of play off the beach theme a little bit. So hence Atwave. That's email at scale.
Creative, makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting point you mentioned about Miami and South Florida in general. It does seem like a lot of companies are kind of fleeing some of the bigger, kind of more, I guess, traditional tech centers, your San Francisco's, your New York's, and kind of those big centers and heading down to Florida.
Yeah, honestly, one of our biggest challenges prior to the pandemic was actually hiring our more senior talent folks, right? Just Miami historically hasn't had the same marketing industry as in New York and LA, and ironically, just how it worked out, 75% of companies from the Northeast anyway.
Yeah.
And then when the pandemic hit, fortunately, we've seen this wave of interest of people who had the right experience, wanted to come down, and we've been fortunate enough to be able to capitalize on that and bring in some really, really top end talent. So I'm really excited about the team that we have and that we continue to grow. But we're definitely seeing it, and I think historically you definitely saw a lot of Northeasterners, such as ourselves, kind of come down here in the last few years. They were calling Miami the 6th borough, right? But now you're also seeing a lot of people from West Coast, California, like all over the country, coming down here. So definitely still in the early phases of things, but man, if you look out 5-10 years, I totally see, I wouldn't be surprised if Miami became the next San Francisco, 10-15 years out.
That's great to hear, especially with the hiring. Hiring is such a challenge. I mean, you see it, every business owner or, high level exec, we all experience it at some point. just kind of the pinch of trying to find the right talent. But that's great that you guys are seeing that, kind of the selection of folks and the people that are coming from some of the more, I guess, known centers and people with our background and, some experience in our space. You're not trying to, I guess, just groom people from zero, right?
Right. And we're actually, when you look at kind of our space in terms of like performance marketing, it's been interesting because we've actually been pulling talent in from your traditional agencies and getting historically, big agency talent to come in and embrace performance marketing as a future career option.
Oh, that's fantastic. So with performance in general, 2020, we've certainly seen some interesting kind of trends develop over the year. Anything stand out to you? Any kind of, I don't know, particular type of offers? Any kind of verticals? Has a conversation changed with your clients in any way over the past year?
So I think it's not just marketing, right? The COVID accelerated everything, right? The shift of everything. And so I think that this year really was just an acceleration of the trends that we've been seeing for like the last, 5-6 years. Historically, if you look at email, right? It was kind of like grouped in like the affiliate space, right? Because like no one really ever knew what to quite do with it. And I kind of feel like the affiliate space is kind of this catch-all bucket of, hey, it's the affiliate, it's this catch-all, right?
Right.
And what's been really interesting is the emergence of the growth marketer, right? So go back to 10 years ago when you and I just started, growth marketing wasn't really a thing. No one had that title, right?
Yes. Yep.
Fast forward to today, right? And every big company has a growth marketer on their team, and not a whole growth marketing, divisions, right? And really what their goal is to figure out a way to drive new customer acquisition, at scale. That's different from your traditional self-serve platforms, right?
Yeah.
Your Facebooks, your Googles of the world, right? And so it's been really interesting just working with these folks because they have their hands on a little bit of everything, and usually they tend to be like really smart people. And speaking with them, email just makes sense, right? They're looking for, hey, what's scalable, what performs well, right? What just makes sense.
Yeah.
And email like really nicely falls into that category for them. So as we've seen this the shift of the growth marketer, we've been in a great place to kind of capture that demand and show them how email could be so much more than just like, something in your affiliate channel, how it could really be a scalable, transparent acquisition channel.
So really kind of turning it on its ear from what we've seen in the past. I think you and I are pretty well, we've been in the space long enough, I should say. I don't want to date us too badly, but we've seen email at times referred to and, kind of just treated as, the redheaded stepchild in a lot of ways, right? It was, it could, some I think advertisers have perceived it in the past as, to maybe be a little, perhaps a little messy or a little, kind of waters that they didn't really want to wade into for whatever reason. Everybody's got different reasons, but, we've seen some of that too, where I think that, you mentioned the position and just these new titles, growth marketing, online acquisition, specialists. And they are, I think, just as you said, really looking past kind of that veneer that was really never really deserved in a lot of ways.
Right.
And saying, look, this is a channel that the return is always there. The traffic is always clean. It backs out every time. Why aren't we paying more attention? So you guys are really finding success then in positioning it as this not kind of a ancillary channel anymore, but something that really deserves focus and budget and really kind of getting full attention from a team.
Yeah, no, and I think honestly, what the key component that I think we are missing is just the educational component. Like, I don't tell everybody, like, I don't sell, I educate. But I think the reason historically why it wasn't there, just the education process wasn't there. But now again, you have this emergence of the growth marketer. Like, their jobs are to seek out, folks like us and to become educated on the topic. So we have an interesting audience. And when you give it a chance, you see the upside, just like everyone who's historically ran the channel, you know, understands, right? I actually think that there's always this excitement. What still fascinates me the most, right, is you always start off a new campaign, right? And everyone's just always a little bit nervous when there's a new campaign starting on the other end, new channel that they haven't been experiencing. And you know, month one goes, it's okay. It's like, all right, I think there's something to here. Month two goes, you scale it up a little bit. Then you get into like month 3 or 4, and all of a sudden, all the executives on the other end start wanting to hop on the phone. What is this? How does this work? Where did this come from? How do we get more, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you know, this has been around for a long time. But what I think is really interesting too, not only you have this emergence of the growth marketer, but changing perceptions, right? Before, you know, Facebook, Google, you know, gold standard, this is what we have to run, right? And I think especially if you look at 2020, you know, do brands really want to be on social anymore, right? And I say that seriously in the sense that you know, Unilever made an announcement, you know, one of the largest marketers, that they were just not going to run Facebook anymore for the second half of the year, right? Where does that budget go?
Yeah.
You know, where else can you drive performance at scale, and also not to be concerned about what content you're next to, right?
Yeah.
Again, email just makes sense. And so we're seeing a lot of that, right? I'm also seeing a lot of, as you have new companies, new brands emerge, and you're speaking with the CMOs, right? And they come in, and the typical CMO playbook is, well, we got to run Google, we got to run Facebook, right? Well, if you have a brand new product, right, how much search volume is there for your product?
Oh yeah, there's none at that point. Yeah.
So search doesn't really work, right? And then they go to Facebook, and you know, look, Facebook works, but it's also a little restricting. And can you really put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Yeah.
And again, email just becomes this great format when you have a whole page creative to educate a consumer about something new. So specifically, I actually love going after and working with companies that are new to market, right? Because I think email is a great format in terms of and helping them to create awareness and drive results.
Yeah, no, I mean, you've hit so many things, I think, just on the head, and the way that, you know, we kind of see things as well. I mean, certainly the conversation has changed over the last 12 months in a lot of ways, and for us in different ways than you guys were a data management company. You know, you guys really on the performance and getting in front of the consumers. But I think that what you mentioned as far as having that direct line, unencumbered by other ads that you might be surrounded by, not subject to the whims of, you know, somebody doesn't like this ad or the way it's just positioned or worded on Facebook, that kind of thing, right? Where email, you've got that consumer kind of in an echo chamber, really. I mean, you've got their full attention. And
right.
No other vertical really offers that capability.
Yeah, no, and I think, honestly, you brought up a good point with data management and compliance, because that conversation has shifted too over the last few years, right? You know, historically, it was almost like a bad thing that email was regulated back in 1996, right? And it was just like no one knew the regulations, and how do we manage this? And now it's a good thing, right? When you actually look at that, there's regulation rolling out around every other channel, right? Yeah. When hey, well, how is email regulated? How does California Protection Act and these rules affect email? And it's like, it doesn't. Email was regulated 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's clearly defined. And so, you know, I think that it's actually a great thing that emails actually is the most has been the longest, at least, regulated so many years ago, because we're able to define it. We're able to play in clearly defined channels, where right now there's a lot of murkiness in terms of where the other channels kind of fit and how are they going to evolve, you know, through what they're doing. Right. And I would I guess to say that, like, your conversation with advertisers probably shifted as well, you know, over the years. You know, I also think it also, besides from that, you know, not to ramble, but I also think it provides a better user experience that you can unsubscribe, right? Quite frankly, right? I want to unsubscribe from the Liberty Mutual TV commercials. I can't stand them. Every 5 minutes, I see the little ostrich sticking his head in the sand. Like, how do I unsubscribe from this? Can't take it anymore, right? So I think actually email provides a way better user experience. It's the only channel that you can unsubscribe from.
Yeah, you really actually have that ability to customize what you do and don't receive in
right
in that way, and yeah, you don't have that ability.
And it's so easy and transparent. I think, like, now, like, try to unsubscribe from a display ad, like you're supposed to be able to, right?
Oh, but like choice or whatever.
Yeah, how do you really do it, right?
No, it doesn't do anything. They're still going to retarget. Yeah. I mean, it's, they may just serve you a different ad, but it's still going to come from, if you go to the Chevy truck website, you're going to be getting Chevy truck ads forever. And there's nothing you can do
right. Right. So it's going to be interesting. And then I think now with as the cookie starts to fade away, right?
Yeah.
How does that affect the overall digital channels? And so, it's going to be a really interesting time, I think, in internet marketing. I think when you look at the big picture, we're very much still in the infancy days, right? As much as internet marketing has come along over the past 20, 30 years, we're still at the beginning, right? And there's so much more to do. So it's exciting. It's a really exciting time to be in this industry.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's I think that people are, you speak to the regulation a little bit, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think that a lot of our clients, certainly our publisher friends, very free market, very, very capitalist in nature and whatnot, but not to weed into political territory at all. But I think that just what you touched on regarding, there being some regulation, there being some framework here, like it's not just a field of unknowns.
It's not the Wild West anymore, right?
Yeah.
Influencer marketing is the Wild West.
It is, absolutely. There's nothing there to tell you what you're actually getting into. I'm going to pay $1 million for a post on Instagram. Like what?
And the regulation is you have to do hashtag ad.
Right.
Like Instagram, like Facebook can't figure out how to say unsubscribe. This is an advertisement. Put this button here and unsubscribe from it.
And on that, do you ever actually see hashtag ad anywhere on anybody's posts?
No.
I've never seen, I saw it once a couple years ago. But
right? Would it work if you're putting hashtag ad, right?
Right, yeah. They just get filtered out. Their algorithm sends them to the bottom and all that stuff. There was an interesting point you brought up before, and I wanted to circle back to it a little bit if we could about Facebook. So with Unilever's decision, and I've seen, I think, a couple others, some interesting articles about just folks kind of marketing spends in general online, and just wanted to become a little bit more, whatever the word you want to kind of put to it, a little more ethical about it, or the companies that they want to work with, or the companies that they want to allow, and and feed their budget dollars to. That's really what it is. Right? We all make choices with our wallet. Have you seen any other kind of, have you seen any other evolutions in that way? Any other kind of trends that have shown that, people are becoming a little bit more, with their budget dollars, a little more picky about where they choose to dedicate them, and not just on a performance basis, but maybe around those kind of ethical, types of aspects?
Yeah, 100%. It's on any big company. It's on the top of their mind, especially after 2020, right? Like, where do you really deploy your ad dollars and make decisions, right? If they're going back to Facebook, right, it's because there's a lack of viable alternatives, right? And I think that's what makes it really interesting, right? Is that, what else is there? And I keep having this conversation with big brand name advertisers, and you'd be surprised how many times I hear we're spending tens of millions of dollars a month on Facebook. We're spending tens of millions of dollars a month on Google. Like, we just need to figure out a way to diversify off these channels.
Yeah.
Right. And so whether it's email or, ad tech in general, I just think that there's the space is so ripe for disruption. Right. I mean, think about it this way, right? Still to this day, 35% of display ads estimated, I personally think it's more, is fraud, right?
Yeah.
And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry just in itself. Like, there's companies that have billion-dollar valuations whose sole purpose is just to identify the fraud, right? And there's still billions of dollars being pumped to it, knowing that that's what you're getting.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling to me, right? And so that's why I think that the internet marketing and performance marketing, we're at the infancy stages, because your competition is really, how do we do better than fraud?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's what makes it exciting. So I think a lot of the conversations definitely in 2020 has been ethical, but there's been this long brewing conversation of what else can we do, right? And this eagerness to learn what more can we do, and how do we put our marketing resources to work? I think one of the other benefits is that, quite frankly, it's gotten a lot easier to run Facebook and Google ads. Like these self-serve platforms are, place your pixel and like let it run, right? So I think that the teams and the amount of talent and your marketing resources that went into those channels are actually you're able to run it with less. There's a lot of tools that help automate that, right? And so where do you deploy your marketing headcount, right?
Yep.
And how do you have them develop these new channels? And I think that's kind of what's led into that growth marketer role, and that expansion of like that hunger, that appetite of trying to find something different.
Yeah, no, that's, all great points. And I don't think the fraud aspect can be overlooked, when it comes to some of those channels at all. It has to be top of mind. And, it's certainly created a lot of challenges. It's sapped a lot of money out of a lot of budgets. I do recall actually, I think it was Uber that put out actually kind of like a researched article in their marketing department. I think they cut pretty much all of their online last year, their display and
right.
that sort of thing. They huge cuts to it. Their business model and a global pandemic, of course, sure weighing heavily on that. But that really shined the light on how much fraud they were seeing through those channels, through display and through Facebook.
Oh, I think there was a publicly announced lawsuit against one of the bigger agencies, and I think they identified like $70 million in fraud over 2 or 3 years
that they just were pulling right out of them.
Yeah. So it's especially when display the death of the cookie, right? Because I think unfortunately a lot of display guys have been riding on the cookie stuffing model, the view through conversion, right? And stuffing cookies. So it'd be interesting to see how that kind of plays out over the next few years. I'm sure there's some smart people trying to figure it out, but how to for lack of words, keep their hustle.
Yeah.
But but I also think marketers are getting a lot smarter too, in general, right? The conversations that I'm having with marketers these days are, I can just tell there's a lot. The marketing team's a lot more educated and a lot more informed than they were several years ago. Well, about all channels.
Yeah, and I guess more kind of rules to play by, right? So you've got to get a little more savvy. You've got to educate yourself, and it's going to be, the strong will survive, right? It's going to be.
And how much of this is like generational, right? I like to think too that like when you think about it, right, it's such a young industry, right? Like we are the first generation of people coming up in digital marketing, as crazy as that sounds, right?
Yeah.
And so as I think as we're progressing and getting more senior, and our generation is learning more, we're starting to realize that there's more options out there, right? I like to say that in a way we were kind of like the lost generation for the past few years, because we were brought up as marketers, hey, playbook, Facebook, Google, and like that's what we knew and that's what we did. But the tide's starting to shift, right? And not to say that, look, I still think that there's a place for that, and I still think those companies are going to grow and do fantastic. I'm not advocating for the death of Google or Facebook by any means, but definitely in terms of experimentation and finding different channels and finding things that work, right? And diversification. That's dominating the copy today. I got to diversify. I got to diversify my media mix.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That word does get brought up quite a bit these days, and it's certainly part of my job. You mentioned something earlier that really kind of hit home with me, and we've had this conversation before over the years. Just education, right? And and being there not as a salesperson. That is our job, of course, right? We're here to generate revenue for our companies and keep our employees fed and things like that. But I think you and I and Amanda and certainly our team over here, I think we all share kind of a passion for doing right by our client as well. And, and educating, whether it's in our personal best interests in that moment or not. I've always found you to be a straight shooter, and I pride myself on doing the same. If for me, if our solutions and what we do and what we offer isn't going to be a great fit, or it's not going to facilitate that prospect doing more business, I want to let them know that. So,
right.
You know, and hey, maybe there would be a better time if you start seeing A, B, and C type of problems pop up, or, you know, you need to address this, or you need to address this, then let's talk. But I've always really enjoyed that about you guys, about the way you do business, that educational aspect, and being there to serve the client, do what's best, and just, you know, give them all their options, even if it's not always going to be the most beneficial to you yourself. So that,
right.
I think is just part of kind of part of what has you know, made us not just business partners and you know, working together and stuff over the years, but friends, and you know, we
right.
get along and you know, shoot the proverbial every once in a while. So
right.
Yeah, but no, it just kind of that just kind of rang, you know, pretty close to home with me on that educational aspect.
Yeah, so like I'm interested from your perspective, right? Because as a compliance tool and the leader in the space, right? You know, you're definitely speaking to advertisers every single day, right? Now, how have you seen the conversation shift over the last, you know, few years yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's nuanced, and it's not consistent with everybody I talk to. There are, you know, a number of advertisers that I come across every week that, you know, they call us up and, hey, we need to be able to get our suppression list over to our publisher, and I need to give them an opt-out link. And it's cut and dry, and, you know, they're kind of doing it because they were told they had to, and that type of thing. But we certainly are working with a number of brands, and it's in no small part due to agencies like Atwave, you know, going out and hunting these larger brands and trying to get them comfortable with the idea of email, you know, kind of going back to the top of our conversation and that type of chat. But those companies certainly have a far different kind of view on things. You know, they are far more concerned with data security, you know, consumer privacy, the laws. You know, you touched on CCPA. I think it's Virginia has one that's going to be going into effect here soon. You know, the lack of a national level type of privacy act, like, you know, you have in EU and GDPR and whatnot. You know, I think that we're going to see more states take it upon themselves to create these rules, you know, to kind of try to protect their citizens in the way that they feel they need to, and their constituents there in their states. So, you know, it's an interesting kind of evolution, I should say. It's an interesting evolution of the space, in that, you know, being quote unquote compliant isn't necessarily top concern these days. It's, we know we're going to do it. We know there's going to be some hiccups here and there, and somebody's going to receive an email they should not have, you know, at some point. But we're really more concerned with ensuring that our data is shared in a secure way, and that, you know, if a breach were ever to happen or something of that nature, that, you know, they're not going to be compromised in a way that could expose them or expose their customers. So,
right.
So, you know, we've taken a lot of measures around offering new hashing formats and data. And I mean, we put so much money into the back end and into our data security, and you know, just making sure that things are protected in that way. That's what these companies want to hear and see. We put all this stuff publicly on the website, you know, for people to come and view and look at and stuff. So it's definitely a different.
Do you think that this has that evolution, then that change in conversation? Do you think it's made your job easier, or has it been more difficult?
That's a great question, man. And you know, I think it's certainly a different sell, and you know, a different form of education. There's more T's and I's, you know, to cross and dot. But I think that it's a little more difficult because we're a software company. So what our solution does is real easy to get somebody on a demo and show and say, okay, you want to make sure that your publisher gets your list, gets an opt-out link, and you can track and see that to basically, for accountability purposes, say, we're doing what we can through every available best means to ensure that this guy is doing what he's supposed to, right?
All right.
Whereas now it's all, that's secondary. It's like, great, okay, cool. We can see that that's cut and dry. That's super simple. Now we have to get into the weeds on what happens with our list when it gets into your environment and we're storing it in your platform, and what happens if ABC, and you start dealing in hypotheticals and security and ISP teams and all these things. So it's definitely made it a bit more difficult in that way with some of the larger brands, for sure.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. What about, so on your end, I think you've dropped little bits of your kind of your education process and your pitch throughout the conversation here, but like, you hop on with a new big brand, a Unilever or an Airbnb or an Uber. What do you get hit with first when you're, trying to educate folks on email and why they should, look at investing?
Honestly, the biggest thing, and I'm approaching them less from a technology standpoint and more from a pure marketing standpoint.
Sure.
But when you're talking about working with the big boys who have real budgets, does it scale? Is it scalable?
Yeah.
Right. The only thing worse for them than a campaign that doesn't work is a campaign that does work and there's no scale to it.
And you can't,
right? Because think about it, you have these teams and they have 2 or 3 people on the team, maybe 5 people, right? And they have a few $1 million they have to deploy each month, right? And it has to be money that's well spent and that they're able to make it work, right? So for them just to onboard new vendors, sink a ton of time in the setup, go through the education process, and then at the end of the day to have it not scalable, nothing's more frustrating for them. So it's actually, believe it or not, it's actually just saying like, hey, like this is scalable and this works at scale, and here's how, right? Especially with email, right? And I think that's like kind of the value that we come in, is that you can't drop in the same email list necessarily every single day, right? It creates list fatigue, and so and it's also because it's a managed media channel. When you're a smaller team, you don't have the same resources to manage dozens of publishers, on a day-to-day basis. So that's where we come in, is really being able to take on a lot of the management for them. So we like to think of ourselves as we provide access to email as a channel, and then provide the tools, resources, knowledge for brands to be able to tap into that and scale it. But yeah, man, the scalability thing is interesting, and fortunately for us, I love to answer that question.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, it's like they get that little taste, and if you can't give them more, I can see how
it's not worth doing, right? Like, on to the next thing, right? We got too much stuff to do.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's interesting. Have you guys, strictly in kind of the deployment of campaigns and whatnot, and working with your publishers and the folks that you have, actually hitting the send button, so to speak, what are they experiencing? Have they seen ups and downs? Have they seen any kind of, I know we don't ever like to talk a whole lot about them, but have there been any kind of like negative impacts that they've run into lately? Any kind of changes process-wise that they've had to adapt to, or anything like that in their deployments?
No. I think that, for the most part, I think the people who've been sending are sending better than ever, right? And two, like they kind of know how as more and more big brands are coming into this space, they also understand what they need to do on their end to be able to make brands feel comfortable buying with them. So I've definitely seen an evolution on the publisher side, to embrace some of the changes that the bigger brands expect when they're allocating budgets. What's been interesting for us though is that we've been, we look at publisher or supply as almost anyone who has an email list, right? Okay. And bringing totally new, when you think about it, the scalability and the potential becomes significant, right? And so we've actually been working with maybe even like non-traditional pubs, maybe like more like e-commerce, or anyone who has an email list, and onboarding them as publishers,
right?
And how we're going to them is saying, hey guys, like you guys have an email list. That's an asset. Have you ever thought about monetizing it that way? And you've seen this evolution in publishers over the past year too, where publishers are looking on, hey, how do we create additional sources of revenue for us, right? Like banner ads aren't doing what they used to do.
Right.
It's harder for publishers to sell, big branded $100,000 packages at $45 CPMs, to create awareness around something. And so getting in front of typically an executive and saying like, hey guys, like we could add a new revenue stream, to your P&L. Something that like they're looking at and saying like, hey, like this is actually really interesting, right? And the fact that we're able to align brands with their content and with their audience that they feel comfortable promoting. It's creating like a really interesting dynamic on both ends.
So you might find a publisher to be a site, Barstool Sports or Chive or something like that, where they've just got a huge readership, loyal subscribers. They get, great sets of eyes, good reputation.
Well, we have
and pair them up with the right advertiser campaigns and have them send directly to their opt-in list.
Yeah, we have Sears and Kmart are publishers for us.
Wow. So
right?
what would you put? So that's amazing. I would never have even thought of them operating in that way. What type of, like, use Sears as an example. What's the pitch look like to them? I mean, what do you bring them to get into? Do you go by vertical? Do you say, is it just purely to them a monetization opportunity? Or are they also kind of, are they picky and choosy with who they're going to align with? I mean, Sears is a huge, well-known institutional type of American brand.
Right.
How did that conversation go?
So when we're going out to them, right? It's again kind of what I told you. Like, hey guys, you guys have this great email list, right? Like, let's monetize it you can monetize it as an asset, right? Mm-hmm. Just like any other channel, like you could pick and choose. Like, we'll work with you to make sure that we're aligning the right brand with your audience that you guys feel comfortable deploying and promoting. Mm-hmm. And then we're able to work with like the robust targeting capabilities, right? So when you're working with people who've like e-commerce sites, for example, like they get targeted by people based off previous purchase history. And that makes it really interesting for particular brands to be able to kind of leverage that kind of targeting capability, right? And target based off of interest. And we have dozens of these non-traditional publications who maybe have historically made their money off of ads that we're able to work with and just create like a different dynamic. I was speaking to some of our advertisers. I haven't used this phrase, but I've heard it a few times that they're saying it's kind of like a private placement. Like they never would have, advertisers don't think that, hey, I could advertise with the Sears or Kmart because that's historically hasn't been their business. But we're finding inroads to the email channel. Now we can get our clients exposure to that audience and many more like it.
It's so interesting, man. And it is, I mean, we've, I beat this word into the ground, but just the evolution, the way that things have changed, and that 10 years ago, just straight CPA world, the click, the lead form, completed, those type of metrics, while they're still important, certainly, and people watch them, and they watch for engagement and whatnot. It's just it seems like such a different model for these publishers, and kind of new opportunities and new ways that they can, just as you said, create new revenue streams and take that asset that they've been sitting on forever and put it to work, and that they're seeing returns out of it.
Yeah, and on top of that, right, I think more and more publishers are starting to grow their email list and e-com sites too, because they recognize, hey, like this is a great way for us to return new customers back to our site. Like this is the most profitable thing that we could do, right? So you're also seeing people becoming more skilled and investing more in just growing their email list as a whole, right? So when we look out and look at the future, right, man, the future looks really bright, right? More advertisers are going to invest in the channel, right? Publishers are going to continue to sending and only getting better at sending and continue to grow their list, right? Yeah. There's some studies done actually that actually say that consumers actually, if they were to interact or engage with the brand, that their inbox is actually the preferred channel to do so.
Yeah.
on it.
I've seen similar types of info. Yeah, that's their preferred method to receive messaging from brands that they're interested in.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, I think a big part of that is because they can unsubscribe and choose which ones they get, right?
Yeah, or unsubscribe, opt down, change their preferences. And I don't need to get into every day, but if you have something interesting to send me once a week,
But when you look at the industry size in terms of advertiser spend in acquisition email marketing, like $350 to $500 million a year. I mean, we haven't crossed the $1 billion mark yet, but I definitely think it's possible, and I think inevitably it will happen.
I think it is too. I mean, certainly, I don't see how it couldn't. With the rise of people willing to think a little bit outside the box, with the framework that we've talked about with canned spam laws already in place. People know what they're getting into. It's established, it's proven, and it's just so easy to show the return and the quality. And I think that's a great segue. You kind of started out with, wanted to talk a little bit about what you guys see coming down the pipe here in 2021 and beyond. And future definitely looks bright in email. I think that's pretty shared opinion throughout the industry. What you see anything else interesting coming? Anything that kind of just comes top of mind, or that you're really particularly excited about?
No, I think we said everything that needed to be said. I think I'm not exactly sure where it goes. I just know that it grows, and we're going to see a lot more investment over the next few years. And I think, fortunately, companies like yours, OPTIZMO and Atwave, are going to be in a good position to capture that growth.
Agreed. And I think being able to work together and educate and let people know all of the great upside, the ways to do it right, and be here and represent best interests of our clients. I think that's what we got to just continue doing. What with 2021? Are we going to be seeing you out at some of the shows? You guys going to be traveling again this year, I hope?
Yeah, definitely towards the end of the year, early next year. Roll out the team, especially. I think it's a great learning opportunity for some of the more folks who are just getting started in the industry, right? So, man, I'm really excited to go shake some hands again.
You took the words out of my mouth. These Zoom calls are great. I love seeing you. I love it. We caught up for a few minutes before this, got to see Amanda, and just to chat for a second, kind of feel like we're not just so distant on the phone. But I can't wait to shake your hand and have a beer and see you guys too. Hopefully here in 2021 this will happen, and everything will just keep moving forward.
No doubt. Well, thanks, Jake. I appreciate your time today. Thanks for having me on your fireside chat. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you hopping on Zoom. Always great to see you again, man. But you guys take care. Keep crushing it. Keep being successful down there. So happy for you guys in all aspects. And thank you again. And we'll see you real soon.
Thanks, Jake.
All right.
Talk soon.
Thanks, Pat.